time for another episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara and break down the latest news on all things Web3, AI, Metaverse, and crypto, filtering out noise and connecting dots as we pour ourselves into the future.
Yes, I can start with exciting news in that I will be downtown Washington tomorrow at the Update the System Summit, hosted by our friends at Coinbase. Brian Armstrong will be taking the stage with Mark Andreessen from A16Z
and A16Z Crypto. Let's not forget them doing some investments.
The lineup is actually really, really incredible. I'm super excited about this. You've got Cynthia Loomis, U.S. Senator from Wyoming. Check one. We called that on the episode last week. She will be there. I mentioned general partner Andreessen Horowitz, Mark Andreessen. You've also got Patrick McHenry, the U.S. representative from North Carolina's 10th district. Ebony Thompson from Baltimore City Law. Darren Soto, U.S. representative, Florida 9th district. Kara Calvert, head of U.S. policy at Coinbase. It is Elizabeth Tanner, Secretary of Commerce, State of Rhode Island. It is a heavy, heavy hitting. Dante Disparte, who I've talked to this guy before, he's the Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Global Policy at Circle. So the access tomorrow coming in Washington, D.C., I'm really excited about this. So today's Tuesday, March 19th, this event happening downtown on the 20th. So when we record next week, I will hopefully have some sweet nuggets. I'll do some reporting live on the ground. It sounds like all of these guys are going to do panel discussions, and
good.
I'm hoping that there is a open and public conversation where I could ask questions. We'll see what the format of the whole thing looks like. But the headlining act of Brian Armstrong and Mark Andreessen taking the stage in the Change the System. I mean, this to me is screaming the financial markets are ready for a complete reset.
Big overhaul.
We have been talking about this for years. And Coinbase with their campaign out there talking about stand with crypto, and we know crypto's on the ballot. And here we are, the first days of spring, rolling into the policymakers on Capitol Hill getting their together. And I'm going to have it firsthand, no doubt in my mind that I'm going to be able to hear, reading those tea leaves, exactly where Coinbase is going, our favorite surveillance partner, taking over Capitol Hill tomorrow.
I mean, this is, well, first of all, kudos, a hand clap to Off the Record and On the Rocks, and to all our listeners. Significant enough in the world, in the plurality of podcasts that exist in the metaverses, we got access. So first of all, hand clap to that. Off the Record is going to be there. Second, me and my partner, Gustavo Perez Tobar, also known as a GPT. No, I'm kidding. We want to write some questions, though. We want to write some questions for these guys because Loomis. And first of all, I wish I could be there because McHenry, while all of his policies I don't agree with, I do agree with his policy of wearing a bow tie at all times. And so my question to you, if you're going to be wearing a navy blue suit, are you going to go with a red tie, kind of show you straddle? Or are you going to go navy blue with the blue tie? Or are you going to go gray tie and sort of let everybody know you're an independent thinker?
Well, I think the navy blue suit probably tells as much of the story as it needs to. It will be interesting to see who's in the audience, who's attending, but it's heavy hitters and big bags. I mean, that's the other thing that screams out to me, that the fact that you're going to be headlining with A16, and I've been reading every manifesto that has been published on their website for the last decade. And to think that he is now taking the stage with the biggest surveillance partner that's come along in crypto finance, it's just really telling to me. And I can only imagine that the meetings probably have started this week, that yesterday, today, just like I talk about, these guys fly in. There are lunches at Old Ebbitt Grill. There are cocktails at the Round Robin Lounge. And
I love it.
the business gets done enough to where when they all show up on stage, the story is straight, the narrative is straight, the how we're going to talk about it is straight. Perhaps the pieces of regulation that are outstanding start to get straight. You gain clarity, and the other thing that's really telling to me is it does not appear that Gary Gensler got the invite. It does not appear that anybody from the Securities Exchange Commission. I'm guessing they will have somebody in the audience for sure. But what is he out there screaming about? Still AI, AI, AI. I thought it was hilarious. Speaking of the SEC, some of the last big announcements in the past couple of days, SEC taking their first enforcement action, where in the headline it straight up references artificial intelligence, that the SEC charges 2 investment advisors with making false and misleading statements about their use of artificial intelligence. So wait a second. Are we regulating them from the financial
side? Let's pump the brakes
side?
here a little bit. Well, the question I think really comes back to what you opened with, which is, I love the specific and highly intentional, this is going to sound weird, specific and highly intentional vagary, right, of the title. What's this event we're coming to? It's called Change the System. Okay. Well, let's just break those words apart, right? Just change the system.
Update the system. I'm looking at the email. Update the system.
Okay. So update the system. So we're not going to change it because we, quote, like the system. We are just going to update the system. Now, one side of the house might say, oh, well, it's about time we updated from Web 2 to Web 3 system, right? The other side of the house might say, well, are we talking about a financial system or a technology system? And yet, even further, you might even split the hairs that Mr. Andreessen Horowitz and company and Brian Armstrong, it's not like these guys just randomly show up in cities and like say hi to each other for the first time after months and months of never talking. Let's not forget that via Andreessen Horowitz A16Z, they, I want to say, to date are close to $1 billion invested in Coinbase. I want to say they're
big bags.
$1 billion into Coinbase. So maybe when we talk about updating the system, it's more like, how do we update the way that I can move my cryptos into investments into your system? Because let's not forget, Coinbase are the feds. You say, well, Gary Gensler isn't invited. Doesn't matter. Brian basically speaks for Gary now. I mean, Gary's just got his hand up his butt, is making his mouth move. And he's going to be there, and you're going to see it firsthand. Gary doesn't even have to be there. Because Gary's like, oh, crypto? No. That's what you guys do. You guys talk about crypto with your little, symposiums. We're worried about the real threat, which is AI. And now you're seeing that separation. We talk about the narrative, the people, but the good news is that McHenry, he will not suffer fools. Let's not forget, he got his bow tie on. He's listening to these idiots talking about alien technology. Shut him down. Then he gets his bow tie on, start talking to people about, is our Pokemon cards securities? Like he was involved in that one. He's been there asking those hard questions. But then in some weird twist, he's like, I want to say stepping down. I want to say he's not going to be on the ballot for this November, which I think is a really interesting thing, because we all know that when people kind of move into and out of, when people kind of update their own system, a lot of these SEC, employees end up working for cryptocurrency companies or Web3 companies. Does Gary Gensler eventually get swept out with the new administration? Does McHenry end up becoming a platform advocate for Circle? You're talking about these guys. No one is dumb here. These guys are all very smart people. Now, whether or not they say smart things at all times is what's called politics. They are steering a narrative right to where they want it to be, because when they talk about updating the system, I think about this as being one of those grandiose things. Like in all of their minds, they're talking about multiple systems. And when you're in $1 billion to each other, and I haven't even researched Circle. I don't even know how much money Circle has in Coinbase or vice versa, or Andreessen Horowitz, they're investors in Circle or whatever. But I mean, when you got, like anybody who's coming in who is a technologist, there is an opportunity for those kind of crossovers. So anyway, the last thing I'll say about this is you're going to kind of be swimming into an environment. And I think it's going to be really important for us to get our questions lined up, because it's one of those scenarios where everyone's going to kind of know everybody, but we are going to be anonymous. in that sense. Like you're there, but no, you don't owe nobody money. You haven't like you're just perfectly anonymous. So I think it's time for us to get as much, like you said, the tea leaves. This is it. Ask those questions. They're going to be like, who are you? Oh, podcast, Here's a hard question. And they probably, who knows? Maybe you'll get them loose at the Robin Lounge or whatever. Some highballs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be texting you from the ground. Like I said, I'll do as much live reporting as will be allowed. I'm sure security will be tight. And yeah, I don't know where else we want to take this. There's a lot of news to get to. I think in crypto space, we can stick on this. Bitcoin sentiment really changing, kind of riding this interesting wave. It's only Tuesday, so in terms of markets, looking at the beginning of the week, it feels like sentiment's changing. People are already like, oh my gosh, have we topped? Is this it? Are we going into a bear market? And like, it's crazy to see just how quickly that bull run just went out the window, because I'm with you. I'm saying no. Spring is just getting started. We haven't even entered. If we had DeFi summer and we had NFT summer, we're going to have AI summer somehow or another. And it is going to be everybody piling in. You're starting to see hints of this with the crazy run in Solana. Maybe that's a jumping off point for us here, which is the last 10 days of volume in trading on Solana has been through the roof. Meme coins. I mean, you're talking cheap transactions, instant swaps, people doing pre-sales, everybody's launching a token. And I mean, big bags get created from this digital funny money. And all of a sudden, people rotating right back into ETH and Bitcoin, no doubt in my mind.
You got to buy the rumor. You got to sell the news. And as soon as anyone in the press says, I think we're at our top, the bear market is coming, I just started buying more, because you and I and our listeners know that there are a number of key things that are happening, right? It's no accident this is the first day of spring. And on the first day of spring, spring cleaning. It's something we always talk about, right? Go to that closet, go in there and get the dust off of whatever your hiking shoes, whatever people do in the spring, they don't do in the winter. Your angling waders, your flies for fly fishing. Let's not forget, everyone's going to be going out to nice streams, casting little lines and trying to catch something. And the reality is, catching something today is going to be like, it's a little bit like kind of catch a knife as it falls from the sky, right? Everyone's trying to find that bottom. Like if Bitcoin is going to go down from 72, 73, it's going to end up coming up at some point. But when? When will I know it's the bottom? Not financial advice, but as Bitcoin is moving up, think of it as it being the behemoth, right? It is the battleship. It is representative of more than half of all money that exists in cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin is the old granddaddy, the gold standard, all those euphemisms that you hear everybody screaming about, especially all these latest banks and institutions offering the Bitcoin Spot ETF, which we know is not actual Bitcoin, but a piece of paper that says you have some. And so when Bitcoin moves at its nice slow pace up, these meme coins, and literally they're like joke tokens that are being copied and pasted and have funny names like blank blank AI and Make America this again and whatever, trying to prey on people's idea that, oh, that must be that meme currency that I heard so-and-so talking about. I want to get in. But then people get in, and then the news comes out saying, oh, well, this coin, had $10 million in deposits in the first 24 hours. And then, we got 20 more, million in the first, it's the
Slurf.
What's it called? Slurf coin?
The Solana meme coin Slurf accidentally.
Slurf. Which is, so you have all this money pours into it, right? So you have to ask yourself, okay, what's really going on here, right? Because let's not forget that there are north of I forget the last count, 1.82 million cryptocurrencies at last count, where it used to be 100, 10 years ago. Maybe now then there was however many thousands 5 years ago. Now we're talking millions because the proliferation is so easy. Copy, paste, change the name, fund it. The question really remains, though, how is it does Slurf on Solana? How is it that What was the one you liked? Pepe? What was that on?
Pepe's on Ethereum. There's now
Whatever
Pepe
those
on
are.
Sol.
They got all
There's
this
Nick.
money.
There's Duco. There's so many.
Pepe on Sol. Okay. There's so many, but the question is, where does that money come from? It's one thing to put an article out and say, we got 30 million bucks, but they don't just do that. They're showing a web address. They're showing a transaction record that shows that there is $30 million of value on what is an absolute crap meme coin.
You can see the market cap in real time.
What I think is happening, we know that this is the first day of spring and everyone's cleaning out their old hard drives, shaking out every old thumb drive to see how many little bits of crypto dust are in here, how much Polygon and Matic and Stacks and Crow and whatever comes out. You add it all up, you might have $1,000 after you do all that, get yourself in the markets. Everyone's coming and doing something, kind of playing around. But if you are in the business of knowing that the halving is coming, which is going to be based in the middle of April, which is also right around tax day, when FedNow is going to come in, it's no accident that all of these people that you're going to see tomorrow are getting together in DC to start talking about this, because now, guess what? It's very real and we have to learn about it. And if we know that the IRS doesn't want to know about any of this until Jan 1 of next year, then if I were someone that needed to wash or launder a large amount of questionably begotten funds, then I might just play this meme circus game where you just go ahead and take, you call all your pals and say, hey, we're going to go on social media and tell everybody on the phone. We need about $10 million of some BS, whatever. Slide it on over. Just we'll pop it up. We'll get the price blasting. Everyone will pile in because they'll have a fear of missing out. And then we'll just go pull that rug, get our money back plus 2 or 3x, and then on to the next meme coin. And literally within 2, 3, 4 times like that, you will have lost complete track of where the money started, where the money ends. To me, this feels like the classic 101. Everyone's getting ready. Everyone's cleaning up their desktop, cleaning up their hard drives, and just washing crypto sideways. Because as soon as Bitcoin hits the halving and it starts to go by hyperbolic, it's not going to be so easy. It's not going to be so easy to kind of hide that money. So to me, this feels like what we would expect to see happening. And look, I'm not going to lie. I loaded up on some crappy little coins because when Bitcoin goes up 1%, these meme coins might go up 1,000% or some nonsense. It's a great way to kind of build up a little wealth before you slide it back into Bitcoin. Again, not financial advice, but I'm totally doing it.
Oh, goodness. It is a wild time, though.
But I am totally doing it, and it's so much fun.
I think it's also interesting to me, just thinking about the vibes, to swing the pendulum from meetings on Capitol Hill all the way to Solana shitcoins. And I think this is my superpower, really being able to bridge these two environments, because the energy around these meme coins, like I'm on crypto Twitter, I'm in the Telegrams, I'm in the WhatsApp groups, like it is wild to me. It is the wild, wild west, literally, out there of people pumping bags, and there are scams left and right. There are pre-sale scams, people sending money to open addresses, people getting wrecked completely. And having gone through NFT summer and getting rugged myself and understanding how these web wallets work and being able to even move Solana out of my, from Coinbase to MetaMask to Solflare into Radium into Dex Exchange, like being able to move it and do it and know how to do it. And then you get excited because now I'm watching the real-time ledger on Dex. I can see the market cap growing 10x in the last hour. And you're like, what? How is this happening? And all of that is the energy, the swell that I remember from that NFT summer and Yuga Labs and the Bored Apes and what all that represented. Mind you, don't forget who's the biggest investor in Yuga. That would be A16. We know Yuga had to do a KYC.
Andreessen Horowitz comes all back around.
Remember the KYC that I had to go through in order to actually be able to register that thing with Yuga, to know that I'm the owner, and all of the things that I know where that is going, which is they got to clean it up. Everyone's got to clean up their desk, and there's a handful of companies that are already poised, ready, have the rails, have the infrastructure, have hired the people, have the big bags, ready to deploy the capital, to build the thing, to launch the thing, to educate the masses. That's going to bring us right up until the summer, right when people are on spring break. Maybe they filed their taxes, they're feeling good. And I think that it's going to be a continued bullish path. That's the other thing. We haven't talked about the election, although we talked about DC. But if people are all of a sudden with one little market correction feeling like it's the bear market, I mean, don't forget we've got interest rates left to cut, and we've got this steady march to a re-election campaign where the incumbent candidate has a vested interest in the economy humming by the time we get to November. So I would say we've got a long way up to go. And watch this space closely. Watch what Coinbase is doing. Let's watch really closely what the big brands are doing. The news of Starbucks shutting down its NFT program, to me, is like, again, they got to clean house. However they did it, whatever loophole, whatever legal, tap dancing they had to do, they got to shut it down and redo it now under the watchful eye, likely of a surveillance partner like Coinbase.
The NFT summer that we talk about, and this is now, I want to say, going back to, is that 2021?
Yes.
Or 22?
21.
21. Okay. So the NFT summer is an interesting one. I just spoke to a good friend of mine who ran the NFT project. We spoke about this project now, I want to say in the first or second season. It was called Warped Sound.
Oh, yeah.
And if you recall, these were NFTs that were, there's 10,000 in one of them, unique in terms of the way that their kind of programmatic design elements were specialized and all that, not unlike the Bored Ape model or the CryptoPunk model. But their special sauce was they had AI-generated programmatic music, and the music had attributes about it, right? This is uplifting, this is drum and bassy, this is dark, this is orchestral, or whatever the sliders were. In the same way you had percentages of, chrome hat or blue shirt, you had percentages of types of musical instruments or themes in the songs. Long story short, I chatted with him because, and this is something that he shared with me that happened to 2 or 3 other colleagues, or not colleagues, but I would say other peers of his who all started NFT projects, is I don't think I thought about it in the way that when we talk about, the various crypto catastrophes that occurred, and you talk about Celsius, you talked about, Mt. Gox from way back, and Celsius and Voyager, and then you heard about Terra Luna, and then of course everybody knows FTX and the Sam Bankman-Fried debacle that went down from that. So his NFT project survived all of those weird catastrophes except the FTX collapse, which, because they were taking investor money and because they're doing an NFT project, what his biggest regret was is that they didn't save any money as fiat cash that they were getting invested in. Because part of, wearing the wearing the hat, walking the walk, talking the talk, and living in, San Francisco and being an NFT project is you don't go borrow money from Andreessen Horowitz or have invested in you and have it sit as money, right? You have to have it as Ethereum or as Solana or as Bitcoin. You pick it, something crypto, right? That's what NFTs are about. Okay. Well, the unfortunate part of that is if you have it all in that, when FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, the whole thing collapses, the value of all of that money that you had invested in you just bottomed out super crazy for them.
Yeah.
So for them, unfortunately, the project is over. And that brings us to a big story, a couple of big stories really, but I was a member. I don't know if you ever even got into the pilot, but I was a member of the Starbucks NFT project. And you could collect NFTs by going and doing these weird errands on their metaverse. You could learn about how coffee is roasted in Costa Rica, and you could take quizzes and you do these little games about which of these beverages do you like better. And you'll get these little points that will then give you, their crypto to buy their NFTs and everything else. And I just got the email saying it's over. That Starbucks is going to do something in Web3 again, but it's still yet unknown what that's going to be. And as you read more about that, you also learn in the same article that that Facebook, or I should say Meta, and Instagram, they've fully pulled back and wound down that entire Instagram NFT minting project. You recall this? I think you might have minted one at one point. So the idea that you could take a post on
digital
Instagram,
collectibles.
You're making a digital collectible. Hey, this is my kid's birthday party. You can mint it and put it on the chain, and now I'm going to send an NFT of like, my kid blowing the candles out, to you and into your wallet and blah, blah, blah. And this new yet another way of effectively creating a marketplace. They already have the promotional marketplace where you can pay money to boost, I think they call it terms, boost a post. But this was to mint it. And they just said, you know what? It's done. It's gone. We often talk about first movers. And, I think that the term first mover advantage is a bit of an oxymoron. Usually the first people who go are the ones who get cut down in the streets, and the second ones who go make it across to the next side. Unfortunately, Warp Sound, Starbucks, the NFT marketplace of Instagram, et cetera, real early, real brand new, real MySpaces of social media, if you will. And they're just gone. Now, does that mean they're going to be forever gone? Of course not. There's going to be something that's going to replace it. But I think they have now enough of hubris to say, okay, we actually don't have any idea what we're doing when it comes to NFTs. We were trying to ride a wave. The wave crashed into the side of the shore, and the sea is calm again. And now we're on to the next. So surprise, surprise, when I asked friends who were coming out of NFT projects, and I asked, what are you going to do? Okay, first answer, I'm taking a little time. Okay, we'll take a little time here in the spring, but then I'm going to get back into it. And what are they going to get back into? AI. Because if you're in the business of riding waves and you're not on the AI one right now, hey man, you're still on the shore. So unfortunately, that's my take on all that. I don't know if you ever got into it or if you still even are holding any NFTs that aren't the big ones, but I basically divested myself of all NFTs and kind of poured it all back, my energy back into just traditional cryptocurrencies.
Yes, but I did too. It's especially a lot of the junk projects. Like I kind of curated some of the things that I thought were still worthy of being digital collectibles. I don't know where else I was going to go with that other than to say I do think that there's still going to be energy around the need and the want for those digital collectibles. I think last episode we casually mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk really pulling his IP off the shelf with VFriends and trying to commercialize it into these actual stuffed animals. It's just a real world example of, I think, how brands are going to continue to think about what the digital collectible means when it can be connected to a physical product. And I think that there's still rules that need to be written around that and clarity. And I think that's where we gotta focus on the financial markets first and the existential threat around the use of AI in the financial markets. And I think blockchain real-time transactions surveilled by Coinbase are going to make a lot of sense. The other thing I'll be looking for, sorry to start conflating topics here, but back from NFTs all the way back around to DC, is looking for any hints around stable coins and USDC. I mentioned Circle would be there. We mentioned them casually here, but what is that narrative going to be, and how thin of a line is this between actually using Bitcoin and Ethereum and other decentralized currencies versus a centralized USDC? It's just such a fine line to walk, and I'll be curious to know how the politicians, how the other blue suits handle those kinds of questions, because it does, to me, I can see the equivalency with NFTs and what the difference would mean, whether or not you can have NFTs that are securities minted on Ethereum or sort of functioning as securities running on the Ethereum blockchain, versus what would the equivalent be of that if there were a company that's operating in some USDC. Like, what would they be building on the digital token? What would the equivalent of the NFT be to have this digital receipt? And maybe I'm not making complete sense of that, but it does feel like there's a parallel there of these are competing priorities that all kind of get at the same problem and it's complete different ends of the spectrum for how to solve it.
Yeah, and another question, just to kind of sidestep and parlay this one, and one that I think you'll have much better perspective on, kind of how to ask the questions, is this article that you had forwarded me, which is it comes from Politico, and it's from their finance and tax archives, and this is just from a few days ago. But what I didn't realize, I mean, you would assume that this is happening. I just hadn't heard anyone talk about it directly. Is as we know, we just had Super Tuesday. There's some early elections that are happening, right? We're identifying lead candidates for different parties, et cetera. And we know that crypto is going to be on the ballot somewhere. Now, just because Joe Biden and Donald Trump are staying away from crypto, everything, it feels like they're not really saying anything in either direction. And that's fine. But a lot of other candidates are coming up, whether these are for the House or this is for the Senate. And there are now super PACs that are being created that are 100% crypto funded. So in an interesting way, it's to me, sometimes it's hard for people to understand a new technology unless you put it in the context of something that they are very familiar with already. So you and I have been talking about this for years. There are plenty of other people on the internet talking about crypto and trying to get it to be mainstream for years, right? Bitcoin is not new. It's been around for more than a decade, but it's still really difficult to sway politicians away from saying insane things like, if you have a thumb drive, then you must be a terrorist. Or if you've ever owned an NFT, you're interested in de-dollarizing the United States government. Like there's all these if-thens that are just not right. But then when you say, hey, there's this thing called a super PAC. Well, I know what that is. That's how I get all my money. Well, this super PAC has a ton of money in it. Do I need to know what kind of money it is? No, just know that it's cryptocurrency and we have a lot of it. Everyone says, yes, I'm for it. And so then just days after that initial Super Tuesday, I want to say that there was a new $80 million super crypto PAC that was coming in. There's a bunch of Senate candidates who are all excited about it. There's new quote advocates that are coming out. There's people who are writing books. All of a sudden, literally out of nowhere, everyone is very comfortable with the idea that, well, if you're going to be funding my campaign with crypto, then it sounds like crypto is pretty cool. It just is amazing how quickly that narrative, or at least that perspective on that narrative, has shifted. And it's only going to start to accelerate because literally every single one of these articles that talks about crypto super PACs, guess whose names come up in them? Coinbase, Andreessen Horowitz, BlackRock. I mean, literally some of the most enriched companies and humans in the world. The biggest bags are saying these are real, and this super PAC is going to come and fund you. And now I think as soon as you start kind of showing, it's kind of put your money where your mouth is. And I know that's kind of what Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX was trying to do, right? They weren't they going and donating to everybody and saying oh, look, crypto can help everybody and blah, blah, blah. But it just didn't work, right? He sort of fabulously crashed. But now if you kind of get him out of the way, and get FTX out of the way and get all the other acronyms out of the way that no one understands and just go back to the one acronym everyone does, the super PAC, then everyone says, oh, I get it. I love crypto. Let's start using super PACs full of crypto. And now I feel like we're going to be off to the races with everybody hiding money in PACs, which they already do, but hiding crypto money as we go into this election cycle.
It's a good point of what kind of money. And I think you made a very similar point in last week's episode when we were talking about the space race and this race to the moon, literally. And you think about the equipment and the technology and the R&D and the people and the staffing and how much money it costs to put a payload into space. And yet everybody's racing towards space. Meanwhile, the U.S. is facing a budget crisis, a federal deficit. The folks in DC can't pass the budget. Apparently, they're going to pass some interim agreement here in the next couple of weeks. But somehow or another, we still got enough money to keep going to the moon. What kind of money? How much Bitcoin does it take to get to the moon? I love the take, especially when you then take and apply the same logic to campaign finance. There aren't enough people asking the questions of what are the rules behind these funds or these budgets or these expenses, how it gets paid for, what kind of money. I think a lot of people assume it's US dollars, but Again, nobody's backing up Brink trucks in order to pay for the rocket. Elon's not accepting cash. He's not.
Well, I mean, if literally, if we're firing, if like you said, I mean, just describing it, if we're driving out to Cape Canaveral or we're driving out to Houston, and we've been driving out, and when I say driving, we're talking about a gigantic mobile platform with like tank treads that goes at 4 miles an hour with like tons of guys walking alongside it with guns. It's like something out of the movie Doom 2. And it gets to the we call it the launch pad. And then someone, puts their finger in the air, like, oh, the wind's not blowing just right. Okay, move that thing back in the hangar. And so much time, so much energy moving this thing. And then we actually fire the thing with the payload. This giant rocket goes up. We actually get into orbit around the moon, and we actually bring the lander down. And then we tip that poor little guy over and break him on the surface. And if people are like, oh, God, what are we doing? What if NASA could just say, hey, everybody, don't worry. We're using a space exploration fund. It's mostly Dogecoin and Shiba Inu. So this moon mission, because when we launched it, actually cost almost nothing. So don't worry. The budgets are great. Would we feel better about it or worse? Like, does it make it worse if NASA and everyone else goes to explore space with crypto as opposed to dollars? I feel like we would be more forgiving of things like rover is not working and batteries dying. I feel like they need to reposition it to optically, we as Americans are in belief that the space race is actually something worth doing. Because as it is right now, like you said, we can't even get a budget balance, and in everyone's mind, they just spend dollars.
Yeah.
And they're spending dollars doing something poorly that we supposedly did half a century ago. And if we could just come out and say, hey guys, don't worry, it's almost cost nothing. That guy over there, you see him, Carl, he sold like 12 NFTs. That paid for the booster rocket. If we could say stuff like that, people will be like, oh, going to the moon sort of seems fun again.
You could literally gamify the ability to get to the completion if everybody chips in and contributes. And if only there were a way for us to keep track of programmatically what each person's contribution was and the value that they created in order to have that value extracted into a final outcome, a final deliverable, a final product. This thing, I mean, it is interesting. The other thing that started to go through my mind is I wonder if there are any government contracts. Like when I joke and say Elon's not accepting cash, like, I mean, in terms of invoicing inside of the GSA and the Office of Budget and Management, like processing these invoices, like I just can't imagine that SpaceX would sign a contract with the federal government that's like, we accept payment terms of 60 to 90 days. No, he's not going to accept that. He's like, no, we got to build that rocket now, and I need an instant payment method. And at what point are the vendors who are able to move at that speed are demanding that the payment be made in a digital currency for that instant transaction, for that provenance, for that transparency? Like, that seems highly likely to me. You could see a place in time where that really provides transparency for where the money's coming from and how it's being used. Brings us back to some of our original thesis about the transparency that I think most Americans are going to start to expect or demand about, like how the infrastructure around me gets paid for when I sign that bond referendum on my local election, and then they come pave my road. Like, how did that come to be? How did the money flow from here to there? How did that guy on that truck get paid with my 0.00001 Ethereum or my 0.0001 BTC? Because we can start to think in that kind of a fractional mindset.
In the fractional mindset, again, like that brings me back to this notion of fractional ownership. And you talk about this at length, and that's something that applies to literally almost every aspect of everything we've covered on this program, is that there is a way for a plurality of people, and I don't want to go back down the DAO route from a week or two ago, but a plurality of people should be able to contribute to a project, just to keep it very generalized. And that project should then be able to launch. And then those individuals in that collective should have some fractional ownership of that and be able to see either the digital or physical benefit of that. So you talk about the road and the bond, and well, what percentage of the gravel that was used? Do I get to finally know and see and understand that the asphalt that came to pave the road was I fractionally own it. And so do all of my neighbors on my street because we all contributed. And I feel really proud of that because maybe Caltrans, which is the guys here in Los Angeles, should, give me an NFT that says, yeah, I partially own this asphalt that's in this road in front of my house because I contributed to it. Now, let's take it off of planet Earth and go, a little higher up into the stratosphere. But wouldn't it be nice if NASA, if JPL, Caltech, the American government, and everyone said, we're going to send, the next little trash can to the moon, and it's going to send the rover out and fly the drone and take photos. And you, Michael Toner, can fractionally own this moon project. And physically, when you buy into this NFT, we're going to let you own one thread of the flag that's on the moon today. Because we know the flag on the moon today has this many threads, and we're going to sell fractional ownership to a conscientious DAO of American space explorers who would like to own a piece of that experience. And so that will come with a successful landing on the moon. I think you could really generate a lot of interest. And like you said, every single division of every aspect of our government is going to have to shift that mindset from you pay taxes to you're contributing to a project that you will have partial and fractional ownership over. If you just reposition those words, I feel a whole lot better sending my estimated investment every 3 months instead of my estimated taxes. Like, come on, make me feel good about sending Doge to the moon.
And as long as you can see it, and as long as there's an audit trail, and as long as I can run my little AI chat bot and I can ask it, like, how much of my taxes went to education? How much of my taxes went to healthcare? Hey, how much of, literally you could have a mechanism with which to query your invisible transactions. These transactions that are being paid with your own tax dollars into the public pools of funds, but to be able to query them, to understand them if you want to, or not. You could carry on, and there will be people who don't care, who aren't interested, who aren't invested in that way. But then there's folks like you and I who are starting to see that the data, that the technology, that the hardware and the software can allow for that kind of transparency and visibility. Therefore, it should in certain circumstances. And I know that's a slippery slope, and it leads us down a whole police state, surveillance state thing. But this is where I think there's probably a lot of work to be done in this zero trust financial system of like being able to talk to your data, being able to talk to your hidden transactions without compromising the anonymity or the privacy of the other side of that transaction. You could still get a lot of insight for how the money moved without disclosing, how much my neighbors paid in taxes, although that's probably public information already anyway. So, it's just a different way to think about it. To your point of changing the vernacular, changing how we describe it. And that, as I've said here, I give a lot of credit to those Web3 vibes for the communities that I was in when everybody was working and contributing to a project. Hell, meme coins are the most rudimentary example of this. The reason that Pepe is what it is in terms of a meme coin is because anybody, myself included, can create a Pepe meme and post it on Twitter, post it in a Discord, post it on my social media, and now I am, by default, contributing to the value of the meme. I'm adding to the blockchain. That's a good way to think about it. I'm adding to this chain of value by creating a net new meme that now somebody else sees, asks what it is. There's a network effect that happens. It's interesting, and I just would credit people listening to the show or tell people listening, like anybody who's written off Web3, who wrote off crypto, who still sees it as the underbelly of only drugs and terrorism and nefarious activities happening on these blockchain technologies. I think trying to find the good in what has come out of that to now arrive at our blue suited friends in Washington, D.C. and some of the biggest bags in America telling us this is where we need to upgrade the system.
Oh man, I think that was very beautifully said, and we got to leave it there. The only caution I have to this wild west that you're about to roll into, although you'll be in a suit, not wearing chaps this time, is I just hope that I don't get involved in donating some money, or I should say investing some money, only to find out that all I am is a fractional owner of Senator Loomis's Clams Casino lunch from the Red Robin Lounge. I would like to not be a part of a of a byline of per diem funds for my elected officials. As long as I can own a little piece of something, I just do not want it to be a little piece of somebody's Washington lunch. This is going to be super exciting. I cannot wait for you to come back and tell us about it.
We will do it again next week, my friend. Take it easy, and I'll talk to you again.
Take it easy. Talk to you soon.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join us next week for more news on all things Web3. Check, please.